Good evening, and good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Here we are, some 30 some odd days out from the midterms, and we're going to tonight discuss reflection politics. Reflection politics, a time to reflect, not as if light or sound would, bounce off of something without being absorbed, but reflection as in deep and careful thought. And we need not go back no further in reflection from then to now, the last 6 years, if you will, starting from 2017 when the previous administration was sworn in, because that's where civil discourse in politics in America really began to come off the rails real fast, begin to derail. And here we are today, folks, as I said, 30 some odd days out, with so many things on the ballot right now. The war in Russia is affecting everything from food prices to oil. And, it's having a domino effect here at home. There's so many things going on in the world, and especially in America. That's where we mainly want to focus, because, we can't do anything, as far as being world leaders and helping the world, unless we can get it right here at home. So it's a time for serious reflection as to the then to the now. How did Ronald Reagan Republicans go so far to the right, go so far to the rogue right, and just pretty much look the other way, as the president, himself was a clear and present danger, and just by the way he approached the job that he was elected to do, siding with Russia, asking WikiLeaks to get him information on Hillary Clinton or whoever, opponent he deemed necessary, firing his administration. This is when it began to come off the rails. I mean, now, it is what it is. And we beg here at Soluble, we beg to differ, because, we're always looking for the solution. We're always looking for the solution. I mean, now the culture wars is something that's created. It's a conservative talking point to gin up fear, which is something that they constantly go to in their playbook. As I've told you, fear is definitely a part of the playbook when it comes to Republicans campaigning against an opponent. Fear is there, chapter 2 in the Republican playbook. But the culture wars is something that is ginned up by the right to stoke fear. I mean, it is what it is. Here at Soluble, just like I've stated earlier on abortion, I'll say the same thing when it comes to gender politics. I'm culturally and faithfully, religiously insensitive to these issues. I will reluctantly, very reluctantly, go where the party is going. I mean, but at the end of the day, one can only hope and pray that, this trend will slow, or, eventually don't exist. Here at Soluble, we really don't know what's going on there. It's not to say that we're not open to learning or listening, but we really don't know what's going on there. To be honest with you. But gender politics, it's on the ballot. The culture wars. Where are we going as a country, culturally, from where we started as a so-called Christian nation, founded on Christian beliefs? So it's there. It is definitely on the ballot. And it is something that should, you should take serious reflection on as we get ready to go into the ballot box in 30 some odd days and make these decisions on the leaders that will take us down a road of peace and prosperity. Um, Foreign policy. Let's reflect. Let's reflect. Foreign policy. Um, it's more than just a get tough approach. It's understanding how to work with others in order to secure the best deal for America. It's not as simple as that, but it takes a skilled negotiator, if you will. And, if you can reflect now, right now, we have that. We have a president in office that's ready to pull out all the stops when it comes to skilled negotiators. Unlike the previous administration, where, the skilled negotiators were overruled by the king for a day president, the king for 4 years president. So there was a real danger there of America being put in harm's way because the right information wasn't being put out. It was just causing us to be distant from our allies, and things like that. So, I mean, how is that good? How is that good for us as a country? So, reflection. That's our subject tonight. To reflect from when it began to go off the rails until now. Now, you never seen in a new administration come in and you all of a sudden you start getting phone calls to the police for people barbecuing or just simply going in their house or walking in their neighborhood where they live because of the color of their skin. You didn't see this just automatically be stirred up amongst the American people before 2017. When Obama come in, you sure as heck didn't see it. When George W. was there, you didn't see it. So, you know, going back and reflecting back on those times to now, do we want to go back there? Do we want to live in that kind of state where those kind of things can be stirred up? Things like mass shootings in El Paso. For crying out loud, the president has blood on his hands from his own citizens. From his own citizens. This is unheard of. This is unprecedented, as a lot of the news media like to say. It's unprecedented. Now, the Constitution has asked the commander in chief to swear an oath to protect the republic from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And of course, if you're on the hard right, the MAGA rights are never, they're never going to agree with 99.9 of what we say here at Soluble. But the Constitution does ask the commander in chief to protect the republic. It's a requirement. You swear an oath. And you can't be the domestic enemy yourself. But by a lot of appearances, it seems as if the president would play that role to go against the Constitution. A time for reflection from what we had then that was unprecedented. That we have to ask ourselves when we reflect on it, do we want to go back to it? Do we want to continue? Return the clock back to that, to a time where it was just shoot it from the hip politics, just make it up as you go. We didn't have Capitol insurrections. We didn't have fake news before the previous administration. We didn't have alternative facts. How can we govern from those positions where freedom of the press is frowned upon, is discouraged by all, we'll try to go by through any means to stamp it out. We'll deny press passes if we have to, just because the media is putting out the truth or facts to the American people. But we didn't have this fake news, alternative facts. We didn't have dead Capitol Police. More than one occasion, as I said, where the president, who's been sworn to protect, is actually possibly could be the domestic threat himself. It's unheard of. It's unprecedented. And whether you're Democrat or Republican, and I'm sure throughout history, even here recently, you have some Republicans who will vote Democrat if they like the candidate better, if they like what he's saying, if he gets out and campaigns hard enough. What do they want to hear? Low taxes, a strong, solid economy, type of things that really gets Republican voters going. So, I'm pretty sure you have that, and vice versa. Some Democrats, they may like what the Republican opponent is saying better and think he has a better idea for America and go and vote for that candidate. So, in trying to go for a solution, when we reflect, or when we go into deep and careful thought about from then to now, reflecting on how we got to this point where, as I said, civil discord seems to be, an ancient relic in American politics. Civil discourse seems to be a non-starter in American politics. So, therefore, of course, you're not going to get anything done. Of course, you're not going to get comprehensive immigration legislation passed. Of course, you're going to do things that may delay, may stall, and it's costly to the American taxpayer. So we can't be biased here at Soluble. We can't be biased. We challenge any Republican listeners, whether it's extreme MAGA rights, moderate Republicans, independent voters. We challenge any to come on and make the case for the Republican Party. To make the case for the Republican Party as to why the Republican Party should lead and not, continue to be the minority. Make the case for the party. I mean, as I said, Kevin McCarthy, he came out here a couple weeks ago with some plan for America, but it was long on showiness and fancy words, but details, he was short on details. So we're asking the American people, this is Soluble. Tonight we're asking the American people to reflect. If you haven't ever voted before, if you're a first-time voter, whether you're just becoming eligible because of age, something criminal may have been on your record, whatever that may have caused you to be a first-time voter, we're asking you to reflect. Take reflection. But because there's so many things going on in the world today that, believe it or not, a lot of the world, a vast majority of the world, is looking to see what America's going to do. Not just in who we put in office, but how we lead on these issues. How we lead on them. We just had a huge hurricane here a couple weeks ago here in the state of Florida, Hurricane Ian. And you won't hear the Republicans come out and say anything remotely related to the words climate change or what they would do to try to stop the intensity, the frequency of these storms from coming. What kind of solution? Because that's what we're all about here. What kind of remedy do they have for the future? Because the storms have a frequency that we haven't, seen until here as of late. And what is the plan? What kind of plan do we have there? I mean, people are losing their homes. People are losing their lives. And, this is, once again, this is on the ballot. Because, it's a shame when these houses blow over and people lose pretty much everything. There's no one solution fits all. Some people have to start over from scratch. And if we can do anything about climate change, if there's anything that the scientific experts are saying, this CO2 is in the air. Can renewable energy make a difference? What do the Republicans have anything that would lend to the argument, if you will, the situation that would cause these storms to be with less intensity? Is there anything we can do to slow it down? Anything we can do to curb it? Anything would help now? We're having floods. We're having floods in Kentucky, Dallas, right here in Jacksonville. Right here in Jacksonville, Florida. So, what can be done? What will be done? Reflect. A time of reflection. You have the president, down here saying that we're not gonna leave until we get this done. He's right there, smack dab in the middle. He just left Puerto Rico, trying to represent as best he can. And we're not saying that, the previous administration didn't when there was a hurricane to occur under 45's watch. But, we need answers here now. We need answers. We don't need, if you remember when Hurricane Dorian came on the 45's watch, and he actually challenged the course, the direction in which the hurricane was going, and interfered with the Weather Channel, with the lead meteorologist in America, to try to dispute what the experts were telling the American people. Reflect. Is that, a president that really cares, is really concerned more about his own ego than which path the storm is truly taking, and, to let people know to get out of harm's way, to get ready. We didn't have this before 2017. We didn't have this. We didn't have dead Capitol Police officers. We didn't have protests like we saw in the summer of 2020 that, literally spread around the world. Because if you think back about it, there was a lot of cities, in different countries where people rose up against the police. We didn't have this. So, as I said, reflection. Deep, long, careful thought about which side of the aisle your vote is going to fall on. Because, we're at critical mass now in the world of American politics and American democracy. We're going to next week begin to take each line item that's a concern of the American voter. We're going to next week, God willing, take each one and discuss it, nightly leading up to the midterm, whether it's crime, whether it's the economy, whether it's climate change, whether it's threats to democracy, foreign policy. We're gonna take each night to pick any particular topic, and we're gonna take it and we're going to put it out there for the American people to chew on, hoping that we can come together for a solution. A reflection in politics. We didn't have, before 2017, we didn't have a president in office who would put himself before the American people in such a blatant way, in just such a way of utter disregard for following the Constitution, leading the whole of America, not just his voters, but the whole of America, even those who didn't vote for him. I mean, going back to Hurricane Ian, you got President Biden coming down here to a hostile state where the governor has, nothing good to say about him or his politics. Well, I take that back. He doesn't have anything good to say about his politics. It's not personal, but he has nothing to say about his politics and the direction that he wants to take America. But you see, the president come down and be the bigger person and say, this is not about, politics. Basically is what he said. This is not about us. Anything, a personal jab or, a come to Jesus moment where I can show the governor up now because, he needs federal dollars. He needs federal bailout. The president, he took the high road as a president should. As a president should. So, which side of the aisle your vote's gonna fall on? Reflect on politics, the way it used to be with civil discourse, fierce debate. One gets that. One gets that. Now we're gonna have a majority on one side of the aisle, one way or other, even if it's the president, vice president casting the deciding vote or the dissenting vote. We're going to have a majority one way or another. So we asking you to think about it, and, these are the things that's been cut up by the right. The last administration was Republican. Before that, we had President Obama, who was a Democrat. He had 8 years. We had President George W. Bush. He was president. He had a 8-year term, two-term 8 years for both of the previous presidents before 45. And then he came. Before 2017, we didn't have a president in office or running for office who showed little respect for the office. Didn't care too much about being presidential when it comes to etiquette. Little to nothing. He came in a real estate / reality show host guy, and that's what he left as. So, we here at Sawyer, we think it's time for serious reflection. For the amount of blood that the president had on his hands, you would never see that. You would never see it being said by the Republicans. We have a pandemic going on in the country, and the president brings out a witch doctor, voodoo doctor, telling us that it's a cure, and putting Dr. Fauci on the back burner. What ludicrous. What ludicrousness. What buffoonery. So, reflect. That's what we're actually here at Soluble to do. The legitimacy of the Supreme Court. the way the Supreme Court has been tainted. We didn't have to think about that when it came to the highest law office in the land. Before 2017, we didn't have, not in our history, not in our lifetime, a president have 3 Supreme Court justices seated in one 4-year term. That tainted the Supreme Court. What's going on here? Can we bring back the balance? Tearing down our institutional norms by disrespecting them, having disregard for the integrity, upholding the integrity of these institutions. When was the last president who had classified information that wasn't authorized by people with knowledge, extreme knowledge of how classified material should be handled and how it should be stored? When is the last time we had that? So, these are just some of the many reasons why we're doing this podcast tonight on reflection politics. It's not what it used to be, but we have an administration in office now who's trying to get it back on the rails. The previous president, 45, was successful in selling to his supporters that the election was stolen, that it was rigged. We've always prided ourselves on a peaceful transfer of power as a democracy. That's one of the hallmarks. That's one of the things that we hold in high regard, the peaceful transfer of power. So when you reflect into deep and careful thought, when is the last time we've experienced something like this on this scale? I mean, of course, we've had, presidents in the past who disputed, wanted to get answers, tried, something in the 11th hour to throw the election their way, maybe, but it was all minor in the whole scheme of things. A peaceful transfer of power, something we hold in high regard in our American democracy, violated. So, as I said, I can't say it enough because that's where the segment is at. We're asking the American people to reflect to a time where there was civil discourse, no matter who had the majority. So where does it go from here? Where does it go from here? So when you reflect back to the 2 major parties now, we have the Democrats, Independents, and Republicans. But the 2 main players, as we all know, are Democrats and Republicans. And, with the election of 2020, we thought that, the previous president would go away, but he hasn't. The Republican Party is still the party of Donald John Trump. He creates some kind of situation where, he's investigated or he's deemed a threat, doing something underhanded, whether it's, rape charges, tax evasion, what have you. And he uses it as they're personally attacking me because of who I am, and none of this is true. And then, what's even more sinister and what's even more lower is the president goes and the former president goes and begins to fundraise off of it. So, reflect on that. Is this a party that is towing the line for this kind of behavior and looking the other way, we're going to put it all out there. We're going to put it all out there line by line, issue by issue, beginning next week. You know, the Democrats' position on climate change, the Republicans' position on climate change, the economy, the Democrats' position on the economy, the Republicans' position on the economy. All of it's going to be put out there, issue by issue. And, you know, you make the decision. You make the case in your mind, in your political thinking. America will not, you know, it will not prevail as far as being a house divided. It's going to be a free country, remain free, fair elections. You know, we vote our leaders in, we vote them out in a democracy, peaceful transfers of power, civil discourse, integrity for the office, integrity for the office of the presidency. And if, you know, we thought we stopped it. We thought it would go away after 2020, but it hasn't. But it hasn't. So what do we do? Where do we go from here? Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Where do we go from here? Do we go back and face the possibility of entertaining the definition of stupid, or do we go forward? So we're going to make the case. What are the answers that the Republicans have for the future? You know, we can't seem to catch a break. The weather is intensifying. The natural disasters are these, you know, strong storms, floods, you know, fires in California. You know, there it was once sold as, oh, that's a once in 100-year storm. But it's too many of them. They're coming too often now. We need answers. You know, how are we going to build for the future? What kind of material are we going to build out of? All this can affect climate change for the good or the better. So, you know, what are the Republicans' position? We know that on the Democratic side, they're constantly referring or consulting with a panel of experts as to what they think is the best course for America. So you reflect on that. You have a president, not just a party, but a president who consults. He acts. He has advisors all around him to see what they think, to form a think tank of wisdom, if you will, a think tank of innovation to bring America out on top. And then you reflect back to a time where all the advisors were either acting or non-existent because we had a know-it-all president who knew nothing but how to stoke his own ego. That's it. That's it. He's great at hiring lawyers. He's great at trying to find the loophole in any given situation when it comes to making money or trying to achieve more wealth. He's great at finding the loophole. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as it's within the bounds. We're not gonna knock the president, but as long as it's within the bounds. His integrity speaks for itself. Now, you've had Republicans on the right, if you reflect, to come out and vehemently speak against the president. You know, Liz Cheney, God bless her. She's trying to do everything she can to keep the president from ever getting near the Oval Office again. Where are the patriots? Where are the Republican patriots? Where are the Republican patriots? What has the Ronald Reagan Republicans morphed into? What have they transformed into? She's trying to do the best she can to right the ship. Not for party. Not for party. She's put country over party. And right now in the Republican Party, that's a rare breed. That's a rare breed. They're following the former president down this rabbit hole to nowhere. To nowhere. But to be assured that it's a rabbit hole to nowhere, we need your vote. We need your vote. This is a vote for American democracy. This is a vote for American democracy. You have Republicans on the right saying that Hunter Biden has compromised his father and there needs to be an investigation. But they never thought about trying to investigate the former president when he seemed to be siding with America's arch rival. It seems as if Vladimir Putin had our American president, our commander-in-chief, the leader of the free world, on the string. The way he wouldn't stand up to him. But we don't need to investigate that. We don't need to see, what can the president in the country of our arch enemy, our arch rival, have on our commander-in-chief. We don't need to investigate that. This is one-sided, folks. This is one-sided. This is biased. And the investigations and the things that the Republicans want to look into, they're not in America's best interest. They're not in the taxpayers' best interest. But you have a clear and present danger in the behavior and actions of a commander-in-chief, and there's nothing. So, it's a time for reflection. It's a time for reflection. You didn't have QAnon with any kind of validity in high political circles before 2017. You didn't have debunked conspiracy theories like the Great Replacement gaining so much traction and ground before 2017. Now, the truth be told, and I've said it here on this podcast before, the Republicans have trouble now making the case to a change in voting demographic in America. That's the issue. That's the issue. And in their minds, that's replacement, because we can't change the minds anymore with fear, with racism, with smoke and mirrors. The American electorate is becoming more educated because they're getting information faster now through the web. We're in a 24/7 information age. So the Gen Xers, the elderly, middle age, they're aware of what's going on. They're aware. They are aware. And they're going to vote their intelligence. Make America Great Again has failed. And the reason why it's failed, if you want to have honest reflection on it, the reason why it failed because in a nation of millions, this movement, Make America Great Again, wanted to carry only a certain number of those millions, only a certain racial makeup of that vision. And so it failed. It failed because the American people know that we are a nation of immigrants. We are truly a melting pot, and all for one and one for all. There's no stopping that because it's been here ever since America existed. You know, the Native Americans are the real true owners of the land, and everybody else is immigrants. Everyone. Um, you know, of course, people are trying to get into this country on a regular basis. Some are accepted, some are rejected. Some of the ones who are rejected may try to go get their act together or go clean something up that the government is questioning and try again. But we are a nation of immigrants. So the MAGA movement, because it only wanted to carry forth a select few forward and leave the rest of the melting pot behind, it failed. It failed. So reflect. Nepotism on the scale that we've seen in the last administration. You know, it's real serious out here in this world. And with America wanting to be as you were, with America being the leader of the free world, you have other countries who constantly want to challenge that, who want to take us out or take us down a peg or two. So, you know, those who occupy the Oval Office need to have their act together. They really need to have their act together. And so we're reflecting on then and now. Then and now. Take a silent moment. While you're taking that silent moment, we have 30 something days. I'm not accurate in the exact number until it's time to go and make a decision about who is going to lead America, whether it's going to be led from the right or whether it's going to be led from the left. Now, with the left being in charge, you can get more cooperation out of Republicans, more willing to cooperate, more willing to bring back in civil discourse, more willing to compromise when it comes to a woman's rights to choose or to make decisions about her own body when it comes to her and her doctor. You're more likely to get these things to swing back to the normal way that they were, or back toward the middle, or back towards the way the American electorate is leaning by voting Democrat, by keeping Democrats in the majority. Because as I said, the Republicans, they're only interested and ready right now to grab a majority and begin to investigate. And they want to tear down, smear their political opponents, and make it hard for them to run in 2024, or already have been able to muddy the waters against them or on them for 2024. Never mind focusing on what they can do to best make your lives better for the next 2 years. Now, if they're smart, if they're qualified, they can walk and chew gum at the same time. So therefore, they can legislate on the behalf of the American people and still, try to find mud to sling against their opponent, in preparing for 2024, beginning to tear them down before 2024. So reflect on that. Can you do both? And that should be part of the qualification there, because that's what a politician, a typical politician does. That he brings legislation to the floor or to the forefront for the American people, the legislators to vote on, and at the same time he campaigns and protects his rear, getting ready for the next election cycle. But the Republicans right now, if they get the majority, they're only interested in legislating, investigating. They're only interested in investigations, not to do both. And that should, you know, be something that cause you to have serious pause. That they can't legislate and sling mud at the same time. So that's what you're going to have. If they're allowed to have this majority, then you're going to get 2 years of serious mudslinging in order to win back the Oval Office, to, if they win, keep the majority. And then they may be interested in bringing forth legislation that benefits the American people in 2024. So with gas prices wavering, with them fluctuating, they're up, down, the Saudis, in backroom deals with Russia, is thinking about cutting production. Could they be trying to influence an election? Of course, it's a discussion for next week when it comes to foreign policy, economy, et cetera, et cetera. We'll dig a little deeper. But there are serious issues, folks, that are going to affect us, not just us here, our grown-ups, but our children for years to come. And for the next 2 years, will be null and void of sound, comprehensive, good legislation that benefits the American people, whether they be in the workforce, whether they be in corporate America, whether they be Fortune 500s. It's going to affect us all the way down the line. If we have a party that's in power, that's in the majority, and their only interest right now is for the next 2 years is to investigate. What? What is the threat to national security? What is the clear and present danger? Now, if any of them say Hunter Biden, trust me, somebody done told you wrong. Somebody done told you wrong. If that's the threat to national security, that's just a way to get them in power. To let them tell it President Biden is the threat. And so they'll use Hunter Biden as the fall guy, if you will, to go against his father, whatever he may be doing in a foreign land. That's the clear and present danger. It's time to reflect, folks. It's time to reflect. Political uncertainty that's at the level it is today was something that, we didn't think about. We didn't worry, if you will. We wasn't really concerned about it. We knew that, Republicans and Democrats, they get it on all the time, every day, when it comes to speeches on the floor, trying to get legislation passed, dealing with lobbyists, huddling up in little groups, trying to bring forth a bipartisan effort. They're there all the time, wrangling, working. But at the end of the day, it's always been what's best for the American people. Some pork got left in, some pork got taken out. But they got things done. So, this is it. This is it. This is not, doomsday, if you will, but we really have to reflect on what possibly could happen if we don't beat them twice. Them being the Republicans, because they have no answers for America. They have no answers for America right now. As I said, Minority Leader McCarthy, he came out in California and put out a forward-thinking agenda for when the Republicans take back the majority. But it's short on details, folks. It's smoke and mirrors. How much will it add to the deficit? How's it going to benefit the American worker? Will it pay? Will their plan pay you, help ensure you with a livable wage? Maternity leave? Equal pay for women? No, no. I'm an alpha male in all my right to be, in all my confidence. But I know that there's a woman somewhere in the world, in many places, who can compete in a thinking type way on my level. I know this. So, I'm not chauvinistic like that. I'm not here to say that anyone of any gender can't lead, can't be a good leader, or to, brand the female as someone who is incapable of leading, thinking things through clearly to come up with a solution that works for all Americans. They're out there. The women are qualified. Equal pay for women is on the ballot. Reflection. Reflection. For the things we have now, and to think, long and hard about where we've came from. The storm that was President Trump, that, we came out of in 2020. Still the party of Trump. No one's come out, with an announcement that they're running in 2024 because they're waiting on the king. They're waiting on the king to see what he has to say, or if he will hold out his golden scepter and anoint and appoint the next leader of the Republican Party. So until he does something of that nature, then all the Republicans are minions now who are just waiting. They don't have the guts. So how are you going to lead the American people? You haven't seen the Democrats let one man take down the party and then begin to eat away at the institutional norms that we operate under in America every day. You haven't seen that in the Democratic Party. You haven't seen them stoop so low. And that's not to say that Democratic presidents in the past have not been without fault. That's not to say that. We're human. We're human. Republicans and Democrats, we're human. But, we're reflecting on the soul of the human that is holding the job, that is sworn to serve and protect. And then he could possibly get in office and do anything but. He possibly become open to bribes, open to blackmail. Reflection politics. Reflect back to a time of integrity, appreciation for office, love of one's country, obligation, or feeling a sense of obligation or duty to serve. Reflect back on a time when we didn't have people in the White House who may be privy to top secret information without a security clearance. People in the White House who may be privy to top secret information, sensitive documents that are vital to America's dominance, continued supremacy, and they don't have a security clearance. You didn't see this before 2017. You didn't see this. It was pretty much unheard of. Reflection politics tonight, folks. That's been the discussion. That's what we're asking, to take a long, deep, and careful thought on where we've been, what we're somewhat out of, But because the former president has done so much damage to tear down the institutional norms, then we're still somewhat weathering the storm. But here at Soluble, we think the solution is going out in large numbers, having huge turnout in all states where there's a Democratic candidate on the ballot, having huge turnout in all states and beating the Republican Party twice. Beating the party twice. So, that's it. Think about it. Put long and deep, careful thought into it. We have 30-something odd days to go. We're going to begin to break down issue by issue beginning next week here at the Soluble Podcast to let you, the American people, decide. Not to say you haven't already decided, but here our goal is to find a solution. We had to come into being. We had to come into existence because our politics got so extreme. People don't want to tell the truth. They don't want to stand up in a way of honesty. When it comes to civil discourse, when it comes to what's best for America. I mean, the mudslinging has got so bad, you have to in a figurative way, walk around DC with goggles on to keep your face clear. We're trying to get back to a time of policy positions by political candidates in America. Policy positions. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. Because we have a system of checks and balances. We have law enforcement agencies who are well capable of investigating matters. So our position here at Soluble is we feel like legislators should be legislating, should be bringing laws into fruition that help Americans. Help them in their everyday lives, make them feel more secure. Make it where their jobs are plentiful. We're competing with other countries in all phases of everyday life. Education. Where's the teacher pay? These are things to reflect on because they're all on the ballot. They're all on the ballot come next month. We thank you for joining us tonight in this time of reflection politics. We think we've done a pretty decent job here of trying to point out the things that we didn't have when we reflect back. When we put a lot of thought into it, we tried to touch on things that we didn't have that were bad for the country before 2017. Now, to give the 45th president some credit, we think he had a great idea, but he just went about it all wrong. I mean, there's not one American citizen, I don't think, that would not want to make America great or greater or just make it great, period. Because, we've had our own downfalls that we've created ourselves. We've had times where, we've shown blatant hypocrisy, pointing to the rest of the world to say freedom and thus and such when there was not total freedom here in this country. So we have serious cases of hypocrisy that have, been exemplified or shown on both sides of the aisle. But we're looking for a solution now more than ever because we know that a house divided cannot stand. And turnout is going to be the key. turnout is definitely going to be the key for beating the Republicans twice. Tomorrow's issue day will be announced on tomorrow because we haven't looked that far yet to think about any one particular issue that we want to talk about that we're ready to announce at this time. So we plan to announce it tomorrow, the day of the podcast. We'd like for you to tune in tomorrow, Friday, for issue day. This is Soluble signing off. We thank you for your time and attention tonight. And even when we go off the air, from now until the day of the midterms, we're asking you to reflect. And, we're all on this planet together as human beings, no matter what side of the aisle we're on. Republicans' houses flood just like Democrats' houses flood. Republicans can receive injustice in the law enforcement system in this country just like Democrats can. So we're all in this together. And it would be very unwise for us not to come up with a solution that works for all of humanity, not just for some fraternized political party and a select few, but all of us as human beings. So join us tomorrow for issue day, and we look forward to next week discussing issue by issue, topic by topic, the things that affect the American voter and the things that are on the minds of American voters when it comes to what we think the Democrats will do to solve it, and what we think that the Republicans will do to solve it. Because here at Soluble, we're all about the solution. We thank you for joining us tonight on the discussion of reflection politics and, just some of the things that we didn't have before 2017. And we ask you to continue to reflect until we meet again. This is Soluble signing out. We thank you for joining us. Good night.